Hello, and welcome to the Blanc Labs webinar, The Evolution of Leadership and Empowerment. I'm your host, Sam Amin, Director of Marketing at Blanc Labs, and I look forward to moderating this esteemed panel today. Women in leadership. It's such a crucial conversation in any given year, but leadership in itself has transformed dramatically over the past 2 years. And in our session today, we'll be exploring the evolution of leadership, how gender and identity play into that, and tools that will help the future generation of women leaders really accelerate their success. Now, without further ado, I'd love to go around this virtual room and ask each panelist to introduce themselves. And a very quick word on why is this topic very important to you? Kris, let's start with you.
Thank you so much. An honor to be here today. Kris Boyce, Signet Group, the new CEO. And it's important for me to be here today to say to other women that here to help, here to support, here to share. Want my experiences to be helpful for other people on growth on their careers as well.
Thank you, Kris. Zemfira.
Yes, hi everyone. I'm leading, I was head of technology and enterprise strategy at Scotiabank. And the reason why it was is because now I have a 9-month-old who's just about to show up and hopefully not distract anyone. So I'm on maternity leave currently. So, but why it is important to me, I think it's just as, I just find that a lot of women have so much potential and just really don't achieve that because they're of their own personal beliefs of, and I'm really trying, throughout my career, I was trying to, my number one objective was trying to make sure that every woman has that feeling that she can do it. And so I think unless we make that happen, nothing else will really work.
That's wonderful. And Zemfira, you're in of any webinar that your baby should come in and join, this is absolutely one of them where it's most welcome. Christine.
Hi, everyone. Christine Williams, Vice President, National Operations and Administration for Residential at QuadReal. I think this panel is important because it's going to allow us to share all of our different perspectives and what women in leadership means to us. It's not only leadership in corporations, it's leadership through life. I've got the 17-year-old, so not the 9-month-old Zemfira, but 17-year-old who I want her to trust that she can be a leader in any situation, you know, sports, school, work, relationships, not because of your title. It's how you're driven to work together. And I'm excited to hear everyone's perspectives today.
That's amazing. I love that. Leslie.
Hi, and thank you for the opportunity. It's great to be here. So my name is Leslie Wu. I am the relatively new CEO at CivicAction. And I'm here because I'm a big believer that one of the key ways that we're going to bridge divides, break the cycles of distrust is through the leadership that we have in this city and this country. And women play an important part of that. And I believe that, Indigenous, Black, racialized women face a unique barrier. And I'm really looking forward to us talking and setting a stage for everyone to be part of this journey and pathways to success for women.
That's great. Oh my gosh. I just listening to responses, I know we're headed for some really lively, exciting discussions today. So I want to just dive right in. So the role of leadership in this new era, of working from home, I want to talk about that remote work, hybrid environment. How have you as leaders had to modify how you lead these days? Let's start with Kris.
Oh, thank you so much. Again, going beyond the traditional business practices, we have to embrace the new world, our new modern workplace for sure. And I think one of the things that we have to do is we really have to trust and empower our employees more than ever now. And so the fact of the old fashioned be in the office for 12 hours a day in whatever industry that you're in, so I can see that you're working, I think now we have to let go of that. I think that trust is such a great vehicle that we have to focus on. I think to foster the collaboration, create transparency, that helps our employees as well. And I think our responsibility is to give them an amazing employee experience. And they're going to feel so valued and contribute more for this, because we're coming up to 2 years this month, really, like 2 years. I can't even believe it. And so one of the things that I've really enjoyed doing is that virtual check-in, that virtual hug, just making sure that they know we care about them and we value the work that they're doing. So those are things that I've kind of focused on, just to give clarity and support. So in our new world.
Yeah, and Zemfira, what are your thoughts on this perspective? I know you're on mat leave, but I mean, the pandemic happened, even before then. So what were some of the things that you had to, kind of tweak in the way you lead?
I mean, to me, that was, I think the biggest change was really, how do you connect to people, and then make the change happen when you don't see them face to face? And there was multiple phases to that. And I think ultimately the cadence that we established was, well, it's more check-ins, absolutely, but it's also, we try to understand each person almost on a different level. So what they are at home, how they operate, how do we work most effectively together? And then eventually we just got to the cadence, which I find that the pandemic was almost going through a few waves, right? So the first wave is just everybody's bracing and then, going through things together. And then there's some kind of tiredness that came in, and that no longer worked. So we had to do the second wave, where we did just a lot of, socials online and getting I guess, a lot of meetings in place, and then that worked for some time, and then it sort of stopped working. And then we got to the third phase, where we just said, well, okay, how do we actually make it work? So, I mean, I think every leader does it differently, but definitely incorporating smaller check-ins, getting to know everyone on the personal level, that's something that worked very well for me.
Yeah, I love that you brought the different waves and the different stages of everyone suddenly now, flooding your inbox with meetings, and then having to take that back, going, oh my gosh, I'm feeling the overload of that. No, that completely resonates with my experience as well. Absolutely. Christine.
Well, to both Kris and Zemfira, or Leslie and Zemfira's points, like, we had to actually schedule effort to connect with the teams as well as colleagues around the organization. What would have naturally happened in the halls wasn't happening in the office anymore. I found not being able to have those organic conversations was what I missed the most about working remotely. Now we all turn our cameras on. People are seeing right into my house. They get to see the family dynamic, the cat, the baby, the hungry kid. Nobody blinks an eye anymore. I think that's great. Something I experienced through it was I changed roles in the middle of it. So I had to move from finance to operations. It was August 2020, the middle of COVID. My new position was new, like brand new in the organization. So nobody knew what I was supposed to be doing. I had to connect with not only team, but my clients and say, here's why what we're here for. One of the things I have said, though, is with COVID, I'm admitting that the travel restrictions and the work from home mandate may have made it a little easier. So I didn't have to do all that connections between airport terminals. I'm like, oh, I can do it here. I can, take my time in my sweats. I appreciated that. And then we used Teams. What we're doing today, that was the start of it. Like, everyone got to see into my house. And we wrote blogs so that we could not only share over the phone what was happening through Teams, but that there was somewhere they could go and read funny anecdotes. Back to the other point was, like, trusting everyone's actually working from home. Like, we don't have to convince anybody that we're getting things done. We're getting more done at home than we are in the office. There's a lot less interruptions when you can connect anytime. When you are connecting, you're getting touch points on phases of projects or sometimes completion. So I think that's been a great thing as well.
I love that idea of a blog, to be able to connect, because what I'm hearing is the need to connect and the trust. I love that idea. What a fun way to to be connected.
It makes me
Leslie.
very nervous though when you post on one of those blogs. It's like, oh, who's going to read it? What comments are going to come up? Oh, was that as funny on that blog as it was in my head? I don't know if it was.
No, it's true. It's true. But like you said, it's a great way to just let people in and in a sense, just be transparent. This is who I am. This is what I think. This is how I feel, which is great. Leslie.
Well, I think I'm one of the, I don't know if folks know this stat, but in summer of 2020, 50% of women were considering a career change. And I, in fact, was one of those women that did make a career change after 12 plus years in infrastructure and at the Regional Transit Authority, where success was measured a lot by KPIs, metrics, etc. I think the one big shift for me as a leader during the pandemic is realizing how critical my network of peers was to me, because basically I was taking on a role, leading an organization in a different sector and in uncharted territory. And what I meant by that, like even the person who would have been sitting in the seat before me would not have known how to guide, because there was so much that was new. And so for me, leaning on what I refer to as my personal advisory boards, the groups of women who I've known over time for support was really critical. The second thing was really what I call people-centered leadership. And so it was always trying to understand really how people were feeling during this, because it was really hard. I had a team I'd never met in person, hard to read body language, hard to know how people were doing, and people were struggling on a number of different dimensions, just in terms of dealing with what was forget the office for a minute, what was going on all around them. And so I think, trying to really navigate in that transition for me, putting my center of gravity from outcomes and performance to really focusing on the team and the staff. And I think really that's been part of why I've been able to get through the last year, and we've been able to be fairly successful in what we're doing. And then it helps that the organization and the work that I'm doing now is helping other women do the same, build their networks, understand how to find their pathways, and enable them to kind of ride a bigger wave.
No, I love what you said there, people-centric or people-centered leadership. And, it almost sounds that, the past 2 years have been so disruptive, but there clearly so many good things have come out of it as well. And in our, just in your ways of being determined to just nurture that culture and people being central to everything that we do, which is reality. So now I actually want to segue in into identity and gender, and how has and Leslie, you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but how has the pandemic affected the role of women in the corporate world? Christine.
Well, I think women, we've always been known to be master multitaskers. And this showed up whether we wanted to or not through the pandemic. Some of us had to be stay-at-home moms, school teacher, 1950s housewife, which I did not do well. Like that one was like, I am not a 1950s housewife, or a reluctant recluse. And we needed to actively contribute at work. For the actively contributing colleague part, I observed that it also included being the virtual social convener. Like none of my Zoom happy hours were from any of my male colleagues. It was us that took the lead on that. It was us who took the lead to create the silly games because the awkward silence was killing us. And we probably also drank the most wine on them. They were fun, but now that we're back in the office, I'm glad that we can do that back in person. Through it, although I do trust that there's a better understanding and belief that we can and will get stuff done. Today is women, and not only women, men juggle things too. We are not tied to Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. Our organization have given us the green light to get things done whenever and however we can do that. I think through the pandemic, everyone also was engaging, asking how you are. Leslie mentioned it. And it isn't just that polite conversation in the hall. It's not, how are you? And you keep walking. We're stopping and we're listening and sharing. I've shared more personal stories and personal hurdles that I've gone through over these 2 years of pandemic. And I remote our EAP system and tell them how many times I've called it. And the younger generation share everything. I think we can learn from that. We don't need to keep it quiet. It's okay to share, and it's given me a deeper connection with people when I do.
Honestly, I love hearing that. I love hearing, just the whole idea of sharing too. And absolutely that resonates on my end as well. Zemfira, how do you think the pandemic has affected the role of women in the corporate world?
To be honest with you, and maybe this is just coming from the big corporate, which is the bank, we give so much attention to what it means for a woman in the pandemic, and how do we make sure that if we were to ever never come back to workforce, we make sure that we don't discriminate women because of just sheer fact that they're not as present, or they would like to stay to stay at home, and then just sort of more prefer towards hybrid environment. So obviously I observed a lot of friends, and just anything that's been said so far by Christine makes sense, and that's what I've seen as well. But I also seen that actually I observed that in certain situations it was actually much more powerful to be a woman on the Zoom than in the office. It's just you could observe people from a different perspective, at least in my own role. And then I was able to connect everyone one-on-one on Zoom, which I wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And then so I thought that you can use some of the women powers using the virtual environment that you don't necessarily have access to if you were in the office. So yeah, that's probably the only thing that I would add. But I also fully agree. Obviously, there's so much that was left on the shoulder of women. I mean, we had employees who were trying to have to find a place to work, and then the only place they were able to work is in the closet because they just didn't have space, right? And that was terrifying. So we also had people who just were just about on the verge of getting divorced, and then they were stuck with their horrible relationships for months, and that's totally impacted everyone's emotional state. So so definitely lots of stories to share, right? And fully agree with everything that's been said.
No, no, completely. And I mean, gosh, I think I've heard that, absolutely. Leslie, in the interest of time, I'm just going to jump right into you.
Well, I think for me, it's three things that really has affected it. First of all, the stats around how many women have literally left the workforce. So in the last 2 quarters, just right now, last 2 quarters, Q2 and Q3, 2021, I think it's something like close to 21,000 women left the workforce, and at the same time, close to 68,000 men joined the workforce. So all the strides we're making around women in the workforce has been really hard, and we need to work on that. The other thing is, a large percentage of small and medium-sized business is owned by women, and those women who owned businesses were the places where there was clearly they were more empathetic to the notion of flexible work hours, the kind of environment that is receptive to women. And then the third thing about what happened during the pandemic in the corporate world is the divides that we were seeing between certain, there's certain industries and businesses that women have a more predominant position, or they and what became really more and more apparent is that women are not a monolith, and there were clearly certain groups of women who were struggling more. They happened to be Indigenous, Black, and racialized primarily, and that the corporate world in whatever industry or sector you're in, any efforts around diversity, equity, and inclusion were now becoming even more difficult to bridge, and are becoming more. So I think the work that events like this, Amy, anywhere, Sam, that we can raise the awareness, find the support, will be to the benefit of the corporate world, because things did not get that much better for women.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought that stat up. I absolutely love that you brought that stat up, because I've been hearing that conversation too. And so that is why I also asked this question. And Kris, please.
I was just going to say, yes, Leslie. 2020 led the COVID task force. 2021 stepped down and made a career change. So lots of things have happened to many women. And you know what? It's not, we say this, it's not one size fits all. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. The past 2 years have been historical. And unfortunately, the past 3 weeks have been historic again with what's going on in the world. And we were talking about the mental health component. If it didn't exist, you know, wink, wink. Okay, wake up, everybody. There's lots of mental health issues right now. And we have to be aware of that and accept and understand some of the behavior that we're seeing, because you're seeing some of your most solid people not so good. And I think you made mention to whether it's divorce, separation, custody battles, all kinds of things that are coming to the forefront. And you know what, I think juggling the priorities, we've always had to do it, because all of us today on the screen, we've all enjoyed a career. We love a career. We love our families. It's a constant juggle. And I always just say, like, reset, revisit, reset. And I agree with everyone else, just what you said. But, you know, I think that congratulations, we made it through 2 years already through this pandemic. So.
No, absolutely. I mean, I can relate so much to a lot of, you know, what's been said already. I remember telling my husband, who is very, very supportive, saying, man, I just envy you so much. You work really hard at work, but I work hard to even get to work, you know. And let me tell you, the very next day, he was up in the morning just doing way more than I was doing.
Right?
But yeah, but sometimes it needs to be said. And I'm talking about something a little bit more facetious, but you know, Leslie, to what you're saying, these conversations need to be had and these webinars need to happen to raise awareness. And you know, I know we're going to get into tools because we've talked a little bit about the challenges here, and I know we're going to talk about the tools in a bit. But I first I was curious about this. You know, what do you think? You know, I've been seeing a lot of posts and a lot of, you know, things on social media about, you know, CEO, you know, a female CEO. You know, what do you think about the CEO title? And, you know, what are the implications about what that means to aspiring, you know, young leaders? And Leslie, I'd like to start with you on this one.
So my answer is going to be a little controversial, I think, because I mean, so it's great to have representation, and we could do it so much more, and having more women CEOs is really, really important. But I think representation alone is not enough, and you can have power by title. But in my mind, power by influence is far more effective. So, you know, it's good, it's interesting, but what I would like to see more of is leaders who recognize, you know, the importance of including others, coaching young leaders, bringing others along, leaders whose values are, you know, they want to challenge. I'll tell you, I spend a lot of time with young women, young rising leaders in the job I do now, and they're thirsty for leaders who want to change the status quo. Leadership that is willing to be courageous, not focused just on their own achievements, and who are empowering others. So yes, we could do with more CEOs, but it's more than just the title.
Right. Kris, what do you think?
So I was interviewed today by one of the 20-somethings in my office, and interesting perspective. She was asking the questions and prepping me for today. It was just a bit of fun, because you know how it doesn't matter how long you've been doing it, you get excited. So anyways, I just kind of came up with a different title. I just think it should be male, female. It should be Chief Emotional Officer. And the Chief Executive Officer should be a Chief Emotional Officer, because I believe that they should stay calm. They should lead by example. They should have patience. They should be strategic, transparent, fair, logical, respectful, kind, and just serve that title with the greatest of dignity and honor. And she started laughing and she says, I agree. That's a really good answer. And I said, well, thank you very much. I'll use that today. So again, I'm in real estate and as well as my friend Christine, and it might be somewhat a little male dominated perhaps. So a smidgen. So anyways, that's just my commentary on the Chief Emotional Officer title.
I love that. I really do. Christine.
Well, that was a fantastic job description. You should publish that one, Kris.
Yeah.
This was the first time I've heard of CEO, and I reacted like this, like, what? I personally don't want it to be such a big deal. It does not need its own name. CEO should be he, she's, and they's, and no one should be surprised when anyone is in that Chief Emotional Officer position. I don't want to add any more identifying labels that isolate anyone. So that was it for me. I'm like, I don't like it.
No. Zemfira, what do you think?
Well, I think so there's certainly so I often in banking there are quite a few men as well, and very often I find myself to be the only female in the room. And I always tell this story, and I was like that since the beginning. I mean, pretty much all my life. And then relatively recently, one of the person at the bank told me that, did you realize you were the only person in the room? And I said, and that was the first aha moment as I actually never noticed it. And then the reason I'm telling this story is I find that it's really not about the female or male. It's about the capabilities of the person who is up there on the top and who could lead. Having said that, I find that having women on the team brings so much diversity of thought and just a different perspective, and it's totally changing the dynamics of both the team and how the business operates. So it adds tremendous value. And then I can also say maybe the last point is I've seen multiple women on the top, and I find that depending on the industry, very often they just sort of become man-like to be able to compete for the top jobs, to actually even be considered for them for that. So all that to say that I think it's really, so if CEO means that we're giving women more power, not the power, but more uptick as I can do it, then absolutely. And if it's more about we want to have more women in the CEO seat, well, yes, but as long as women are as competent as anyone else in that seat.
Yeah, but no, I love this, and I love the diversity in perspectives right here, even with this, and all of it's so insightful, and definitely food for thought for me too, because I contemplate this as well as what does it say, and what does it mean to someone who is aspiring to be a CEO. So now, look, I've got these inspiring women leaders on this call, and one thing that I definitely want to explore is, tools for success. As a leader, I can see, yes, you can influence change. It's not easy, but you can do it. What are some of the things that you'd recommend women do as new entrants into the workforce, or even at a middle management level? What can they do to continue to drive equity? Zemfira, if you'd like to start with this one.
I think it's just really work hard. Work hard and be vocal. I think that's the two main things. And I would say later on, take risks that, I find that often women try not to, and men are very open to. So those would be three things I would always bring up, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love I think there are times when even, I have to tell myself, don't be afraid, just do it. You want to do it, just do, and to be vocal too. I think that example of this webinar, me wanting to actually bring this message out, finding an avenue to do that. Leslie, what are some of the things you feel new entrants in middle management could do?
So a couple things, and I don't know that it's limited to entry level or middle management. I think it's all levels. So one is this concept of shout outs. I think the more all of us shine a light on, and it doesn't have to be the world's biggest achievement, but every time, in particular, women in our workplace don't get the accolades, or they don't get the spotlight as often as they should. And wherever any of us have an opportunity, we should do that. Related to that, I think is all of us can be mentors or sponsors, and there's not only you're in a more senior role and therefore you should mentor someone in a more junior level. I believe in reverse mentoring, because I know in all my mentor-mentee exchanges I learn as much from my mentees as maybe they might get. Sometimes I learn more than they might. The third thing I would say is all of us especially in management, you have a role in recruitment and hiring and advocating for more inclusive practices around job descriptions that are lilted towards certain genders because of how they're, words that are chosen that discourage young women from taking up or considering themselves suitable to apply, or who's on the interview panel. So that's a really practical thing. And then finally, I would say helping each other network and connect more and more and more. So I spent a lot of my time just saying, you two should meet. You don't know each other, and those are things in my mind. Those kind of four things really anybody can do, but particularly if you're in middle management or entry level, they're probably really, really helpful things to take advantage of.
Oh, that's great. I love those ideas. Christine.
My ideas are very similar, Leslie. I would say trust that you belong and can make a difference. Confidence is a very attractive trait, both personally and professionally. Takes confidence to be able to sit at the table and just listen. Takes confidence to contribute when it makes sense for you to contribute and not just be heard. So really register with that. To Leslie's point, I think it's really important to celebrate others, men and women, whoever you're working with and learning from. Be sure to give shout outs and thank them and acknowledge how they're helping you through your journey. Helping others get recognized is going to just have everyone be recognized. If you are in management, remember you need people on your team that complement each other, not just act or look like you. A team with wide skill sets, personality types, genders, perspectives, race, different ages, they will all make the team stronger. That's how I feel we should go about it.
No, I absolutely love that. Kris.
I everything you just said, I really love the shout out. So I'm going to do a shout out to somebody very special who taught me a lot. And she's younger than me, and her name's Laura Holland. So hello, Laura. And I think it's so important, like you say, pay it forward, support each other, lift each other up. We just had a new hire here in the office, very, very confident and just lovely during the interview process. And then getting into this new environment and a little bit of challenges and adjusting after being home and not in the workforce. And so today I just pulled her aside and I said, how are you doing? And she goes, oh, I'm so nervous. I said, well, remember when you had the interview and your shoulders were back and you were so confident telling us about your credentials? I said, that's you, and that's why you're here. So I think it's everything that you just said, all of us together, making people feel good about themselves. And I think all of us know enough where we can see things. And I think to go in and kind of just do an unsolicited intervention and lift somebody up, number one, it makes you feel good. And then they go home and tell their family about how somebody in a leadership role at work made them feel. And so those are all things. And I worked for quite a few very humble people, and all I wanted to do is be just like them. I just wanted to make other people feel that way. And so those are just such great takeaways and life lessons that are so important, I think, when we're in these leadership roles.
I love that. One of I want to share very quickly. One of the things that in my previous role that we did was every month we'd kind of look to see, how we'd run campaigns, how we'd run marketing, and looked at, what went really well, what were some of the glitches, and, what are some of the goals, looking ahead. But the fourth part of it was so important. It was gratitude. So at our monthly meetings, we would do shout outs to each other on, hey, this was a project, this is what happened. And, this person, thank you so much for contributing XYZ to it. And it went such a long way in banding all of us together. And there were a lot of, happened to be a lot of women on my marketing team. And I never once wondered, would I have help if something came up. I always knew that people were just a phone call or a text message away. And that showing gratitude, appreciating people around you, and calling out to it, oh, it speaks volumes. It really does. All right, so now what I want to talk about is, what type of initiatives do you invest in for yourself, and what do you do to empower yourselves? Kris, let's start with you.
I am the fastest paddle boat operator on Salerno Lake with my dog Milo. Anyways, self-care. I think that you've got to find a way, whatever it is, for your own self-care, time for yourself. And then your motto is that I'm going to make you guys do self-care because it's just contagious if it's accepted. So I think that's so, so important. And like what Leslie was saying, I love LinkedIn, guys. During the pandemic, it's like everybody was in your living room. You could check out what was going on, whether it was business or, anything, just anything related. So I think I followed the Women's Executive Network. I followed Women of Influence. I loved watching Third Factor talk about executive coaching and knowing yourself. Any online course that somebody recommended to me, I would try it. Podcasts, and those are all things that it's like constant learning, and it keeps you more fresh and alert, and you're not stuck in a pandemic. You can still live and breathe and learn and teach. And the other thing that I tend to be very known for is what I'll say to you. You guys got 4 minutes? I just want to share a story with you. Well, I'm a storyteller. My 4 minutes are usually 20 minutes. But I just get so excited when somebody needs some help and they say, can you share an experience with me? It's like, I'm in. And I think just helping each other out, the empowerment of self-care and just truly caring about another human being. So that's kind of like, as my dad says, that's how I roll. So that's my 2 cents.
Nice. I love that. Christine, what are some of the ways in which, you empower yourself?
From my perspective, I'm a lifelong learner. And so I think the best thing that I could have done initially was to get my MBA. Now, that was a long time ago, and that's when the MBA was actually higher education. Today, it's standard education. I get that, but what it did for me, for my confidence, and it enabled me to have confidence and feel comfortable at other tables, not just the finance table. Always kind of registered in leadership courses or seminars. There was one that I went to that was 2 years long. It was a global leadership program. I can remember sitting around the table initially with 11 other participants, thinking to myself, what am I doing here? What am I going to be able to contribute? And this was after my MBA. And as I sat and listened for the first morning, I slowly realized, you know what, common sense gets us really far. You don't need to be the subject matter expert in everything to be able to contribute in a conversation. That was a big aha moment for me. From a coach perspective, I'm very lucky to have professional female best friends in my network, 2 of them who are life and career coaches. So I get a lot of free advice from them. Also, surrounded by industry experts, and I am willing to put my hands up and say, hey, I don't know, will you help me? And they are always there to help me through it as well. I did not sign up for more technology, Kris. When I can turn my phone over and get away from it, I'm out. But I do like to read a good book, actual paper. And the most recent ones that I've been reading that I've been appreciating the messages is How to Be an Anti-Racist just to have other perspectives and how that is happening in our communities and our world. And then from a leadership perspective, Unleashed, the unapologetic leader's guide to empowering everyone around you, which Sam, I think you sent my way. It was awesome.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love to read myself, and I love podcasts, the works, everything that you've mentioned, both of you. I obviously love engaging in all of that. Zemfira, what do you do to empower yourself? What do you invest in?
So I think it's a combination of everything that's been said. So obviously taking care of yourself. So I'm actually I do CrossFit, which is a sport, which I find that this morning you just kind of go in and you start your day on a high note, and then you're just lying on the floor and unable to breathe, and that's how I like to start my day. The second is obviously eating healthy and nutrition, but then the third one, which is I like the concept of lifelong learner. And when I was at McKinsey & Company, which is where my background is, it invested enormous amount of time and energy and money in people and its development. And so when I left, I really put my really try to find how do I bring this outside of McKinsey in my day to day. And so that's what led me to join YPO. That's what led me to get a coach. So I actually have a coach who is a fantastic person who really helped me who challenges me. So it's not sort of a coach who just tells you what to do. He says, is that the right decision now in your life? And then, is that the right thing to do? And then, so there's a lot of introspective that I'm doing based on what he's telling me, but also meditation, which is something that I was introduced to about 4 years ago. That became a big part of my life. And then, so a lot of understanding of who I am as a person, what drives me, and then self-motivation through that is an important part of how I get myself out there. And I'll say maybe the third thing is, I always, whenever I start feeling comfortable, I know that I'm not pushing myself hard enough, and this is the wrong place to be. So, and then I just go, and sometimes I do stupid things like jumping with the parachute, stuff like that. And sometimes it's career change, right? Sometimes it is about, well, that's not the right place for me to do. Sometimes it is having a baby who's just about to show up.
I love it. I absolutely love that. Leslie.
So, I mean, a lot of what folks have said, I don't want to repeat. Maybe a couple things. I think, so being trained as an architect, I like to keep and considering myself a fairly creative person. I like, my curiosity is less in sort of my field, and I like to explore art, music, pop culture. Just it's completely different and keeps my brain working horizontally as much as vertically. I think the second thing for me is self-reflection. And so many years ago, I started this little website and blog called She Builds Cities, and it has become my little outlet to when there's an issue that may have nothing to do with my work. It's just how I'm feeling, a situation in the country, in my home, in my neighborhood, and I can just write it and I put it out there. And I couldn't be bothered if anybody read it or not, but it's cathartic, and I feel good about it because I put it out there. And then I think the only other thing I would say is I really enjoy and get energized by the volunteer work that I do. And so choosing boards or activities that I sit on where I feel, because I always kind of say I'm more than my job. And so sort of stretching all these other dimensions of myself actually are the places that I get energy from, in addition to what I get from day to day, because of course I love the work I'm doing, but I'm always seeking out other forms of interests and excitement and points of view.
It gives you so much perspective, I find, because that resonates with me as well. It just kind of puts you in a completely different space. And Zemfira, to your point of, when I'm feeling comfortable and things are, automatic, it's uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable being uncomfortable. No, I absolutely love these suggestions, and I know that we can, this conversation has been absolutely wonderful. I feel like we can talk for hours and hours. if we were left to our own devices. And I hope that this conversation has been great for the audience. I know that they're going to get so much from it. And at this point, I would like to conclude the webinar by thanking every one of you for taking the time to have this meaningful discussion with me. And I look forward to seeing the great change that in our collective futures, in our spaces, in ways that we are going to empower, enterprising women and men to be, better and just great leaders in the future. So thank you very much, everyone. I am Sam Amin, Director of Marketing at Blanc Labs, and thank you very much for watching.
Thanks for
Thanks
having
so
us.
much. Thanks so much, Sam.
Take care, guys.